drier air is really what you're looking for in terms of the taste of fall, the lower dew points. Now, there are going to be a few showers out there. We'll see that kind of lingering underneath the upper level low. This is what I'm talking about with that strato Q kind of scene to the sky, which some of those clouds could bring some showers. And we'll see that those instability showers up there around Green Bay and Milwaukee, they shouldn't add up to a whole lot, but, you know, they'll definitely they'll put a damper on what could be an otherwise really nice day. We've got the rainfall, though, with the front. Until that comes through, we've got chances of rain coming in. Most spots less than an inch. A few of you may get up over an inch of rain as we see the front, still move fairly slowly through. And then we get into scattered showers around the Great Lakes, especially the eastern lakes hanging in through the weekend. And then temperatures really tumbling. 57. That's it for your high in Minneapolis. Chicago, 56. Those are high temperatures, not low temperatures that we are looking at here. It is time, isn't it? Detroit, we're going to be looking at things clearing out. And Sunday, the Lions are hosting the Panthers. We've got temps in the 50s, kind of classic fall football weather here, but maybe a little on the chilly side, especially compared to what we've had recently, Alex.
Absolutely.
And show everyone how this is going to play a role in your forecast, your wet forecast here in the Northeast. You're in the cone here in Maine yet again. Now, you look at, first of all, the timing. We're talking Sunday early morning, about the same time the front is coming in. So the two will be tangling, and 50 miles per hour, and it's expected to be post-tropical or getting close to that at this point. It's already not had sort of a classic look to it. Anyway, most of its life has been like that. Here is where we're finding Tropical Storm Philippe right now. It's nearly 450 miles north of St. Thomas, so it's finally made some progress moving away. But there's the center circulation, and there's the convection south. There's some to the north. I mean, it's very disorganized. And that's actually what came out of the last Hurricane Hunter flight, is that they found it actually a little stronger, winds 45 miles per hour, but that it's still very disorganized. Now, here's a look at some of those buoys nearby. We've got buoy 41046, only gusting to 13. So it's not like we have terribly strong winds here in proximity to it, which hence the 45-mile wind intensity that we have. There is a tropical storm warning up for later today. Conditions expected to go downhill. The storm may track just to the west of Bermuda, but, you know, as you saw, a lot of the thunderstorm and convection is on the eastern side. So, you know, likely that will have some impacts here, at least with tropical storm force kind of squalls and winds. Nothing that we can't handle in Bermuda, but this is our fourth threat this year. So it's definitely been a stressful year. So we track this, and here again, watching Philippe, watching that rain come to Bermuda. That's overnight tonight into tomorrow morning. And then we see the moisture start to move into the Northeast by Saturday into Sunday. So here's Philippe down here, and you notice how it's big in terms of the expanse of it. The moisture gets kind of sucked into parts of the Northeast, maybe making some of that rain a little heavier at times, especially up into Maine. This is now Sunday morning, and the circulation itself will be broad, maybe going in Maine or Nova Scotia, up into southeastern Canada, lifting up pretty quickly because things are going to be moving quick at this point. And then we're going to be watching for some of that moisture to get drawn in and around, but there's a lot of dry air also working in at the same time. So, Alex, I think that'll cut down any big amounts of rainfall. The waves, those will be up again. Another week with that, weekend with that on the eastern seaboard.
It just seems like it's been a 40s. Yeah.
I think we have 40s. A soccer game on Sunday morning. Oh,
Jen's
boy.
Got the heated blanket and the coats and everything going on.
Yeah. I got to make sure I get my little Mr. Buddy heater ready to go. Well, fall is in the air, and so is the frost. Well, coming up, where the first freeze alerts will go into effect tonight.
Correct answer, by the way.
Oh, really? Is that what you voted for?
It's got to go with the hoodie. I mean, it's just so versatile.
Extra warm. By the way, the music choice, Complicated, I thought was spot on. Because we do have a complicated relationship with October.
It is true. It is not all peaches and cream.
Yeah, I mean, everyone loves October until you hear what we're about to talk about in about 30 minutes.
Absolutely. So make sure you check in with that. And of course, keep sending us your comments there. You can head to X as well as Threads, and we will continue to share them as we head on throughout the show.
Please don't stop. The fall color has really been just absolutely stunning. We've been in the 80s. Once we get into some of these cool nights, I think it really might accelerate the rest of the trees coming into full bloom or color, so to speak. We are seeing peak right now in northern Minnesota, getting down to central Minnesota, extreme northern Michigan, mainly up into the UP. We've got a lot of color. It's really starting to come down, though, across the lower Michigan and the Northeast. Maine, New Hampshire, Vermont, that color is really starting to set in. Take a closer look at where we are right now reporting peak color almost all across the state of Maine, with the exception of right along the coast and down East Maine. Northern Vermont and New Hampshire, you're at peak, but the patchy color is getting now much more throughout the entire area. And we've got some pockets of either near peak or peak down into Connecticut, but really we still have got another couple weeks to go before we get completely there. You can see it from space, how the change has been happening. So this is back in August. Green here all across, as you would expect. We fast forward now to October the 4th and take a look at the colors that are now showing up all the way from our satellites in space. So yes, it is that widespread and that stunning, actually. We go to Minnesota and Wisconsin, where you're getting into peak conditions right now all across the northern and central parts of these states. Southern parts still hanging on, just patchy color, but it's going to expand pretty quickly. I think especially with this weather change that we're getting here, these sunny days and cool nights. The trees love it, and we'll be watching that too in other states in the West, where we're already at peak right now in western Colorado, Wyoming, and northern Utah. Well, don't forget our question of some of their warmest days of the whole year right now, or close or tying it anyway.
I mean, that's what happens, right? When one part of the country goes up, the other part goes down. Yeah. So we are experiencing it. Welcome back here. America's Morning Headquarters here for you on this Thursday. Lots to track. We got some storms right now that are impacting us across parts of Texas.
Yes, so we'll get you right into that. Storms flaring up over part of the Northeast and Great Lakes here into the south. And so once it gets through here, we're going to see some changes. Today, though, we're doing okay, although it's pretty foggy. We were showing you a Bar Harbor camera angle earlier, and it was, wow, it is really sucked in fog this morning. Same thing in Boston, and this is classic for this time of year. This is our fog season, right? So not surprising that we're getting that, especially with, you know, kind of, I don't say how muggy it is, but the dew points are decently high, considering it's October. It's going to change with the front. Today, we're going to clear out. We'll get temps up into the 70s in New York, upper 70s in Binghamton, 83 Burlington. Not the October record-breaking numbers that we saw yesterday in the upper 80s, but we're still going to be well above average. However, the front comes in and changes not just the temperatures, but brings in rain, so that sunshine going away could be heavy at times, especially in northern New York, Vermont, New Hampshire, and into Maine. Because not only do we have the front coming in, we're also going to see some of the moisture from Philippe come up here and get tangled in with that front, which could lead to some heavier rain, especially, I think, in parts of Maine is where you'll really see and feel that impact. The whole upper level trough associated with this takes a tilt, a negative tilt, and that's going to help draw in even more moisture. They'll help encourage some rising air, maybe some more clouds and rain. So it'll be a decent rain coming through with this front, but when it comes through, we'll get the drier.
Well, meteorologist Chris Warren explains.
It really is complicated. You know, I mean, we love it.
Yeah.
Temperatures like this, how can you not?
It really can be a fantastic month. In fact, I was reading an article by a climate scientist, and he posted there's just so many cities across the nation where
we have all this kind of notorious past history. So delving into the split personality, we want to take you back to some of these past storms. And of course, hurricane season is still active. We still sometimes have a secondary peak in October. Let's go back to 2020 and Hurricane Delta. I mean,
first of all, it was a big year when you got to basically through the Greek alphabet. So you knew it was a busy time, and October was no stranger to it. At that time, it was record time for the 4th landfall in the U.S. for that season.
This is Louisiana, and we had just been threatened and hit by Laura in Louisiana the month before. I mean, Delta itself had quite a history when it was out over the open ocean, but it did hit Louisiana as a Cat 2. And then after that, we had Zeta also in 2020.
And this was only like just a few weeks later.
Yes.
Still in the month of October here. Actually became a Category 4 hurricane within 28 hours of becoming a tropical storm. So this thing quickly ramped up. Landfall Louisiana as a Category 2 hurricane. That was Zeta.
Yeah, I mean, and so Zeta not only came in and, of course, affected Louisiana, but then there was tropical storm warnings all the way into the Carolinas, into Virginia. It ended up bringing snow to parts of the Northeast here. It was really, you know, very interesting, actually, how that just affected so much of the East. And then, of course, you know, speaking of snow, Alex, remember in 2011, we had that Snowtober?
Yeah.
2011. That was the year without Halloween for many, actually, in the Northeast.
Pretty wild, right?
Yeah.
Because it ended up being known as, again, as you mentioned, Snowtober, Halloween, white Halloween here for us. Yeah. Record snowfall for at least 20 different cities.
Yeah. Yeah, that was a thing. And, you know, one thing that also happens when you have the changing weather, like we have in October, is severe weather. We saw that in Texas back in, what year was that? 2019. 2019.
Yeah, so this is all very recent memory, right? And you can see some of the damage that was a result of that severe weather there in Dallas. Yeah, that is, again, October.
Yeah.
It can be very calm, serene, but you can see and end up with scenes like this.
I mean, just last night we had storms in the Fort Worth area. This was back in 2019, an EF3 in the Dallas area, their costliest tornado in Texas history, and 36 tornadoes actually out of this whole event. So October definitely can be very dynamic and a prolific weather maker, even though it seems like it's going to be benign. Just, Charleston. Remember Hurricane Joaquin? It never made landfall, but all the moisture got sucked in, and that was back for us here in 2015. All the flooding in Charleston.
Yeah, so, just know that even though for the vast majority of us and for a good part of the month generally is quiet, there are those years where October can be not so great.
I see. Threat. So tiny out here.
I was going to say, it's like this one dot. It's like, could everything just move around it?
It's right in the crosshairs. So has Maine been this year. Which
is just a wild thing to think about. Yeah, yet another cone to be in here in the state of Maine. You'll see what happens here as we work through the weekend. Philippe moving northbound, then kind of bending back towards the north and the west.
Yeah, so the steering flow is going to be high pressure, blocking it from going east. And then we're going to have big low pressure over here moving into southeastern Canada, and that'll help kind of tilt the flow and get this thing to move up there into Maine, into Canada. And they'll be moving quickly too, at this point. But there'll be some wind and some rain.
Yeah, absolutely. So there we go. The latest advisory from the National Hurricane Center. There's the center of the circulation there, 45 mile per hour tropical storm moving northbound at 10 miles per hour. Look at where all the nasty weather is, though, well on off towards the south and east of where that center is, at least right now.
There's just that one little flare up.
Yeah, just a little.
Right there, a little boop. It's so disorganized, and there's really not much at all on the west side of it either. So, not expecting any rapid strengthening or anything, but it may increase in strength a little bit. It'll have a little help from maybe some of the upper level winds as it goes through that extratropical transition. Yeah,
that transition really starts to take place. So the next 5 days, you can see moving northbound, there's Bermuda, and you can see the opportunity and probability of tropical storm force winds, I'd say right around about 60% or so there on the island, and then moving northbound, the opportunity and the probability comes down just a bit. But again, that's due to time. And we'll probably see that kind of number jump up a little bit here as we head through towards the weekend.
So watch the forecast as we take you into the next 24 to 36 hours. Bermuda tonight, tomorrow, we are in it. We'll get into some of those squally conditions, tropical storm force winds. And then as we get you into Saturday and Sunday, now we see the rain approach the northeast.
Yeah, so that really will be in with us by Saturday evening through the overnight hours and then into Sunday. Look how quickly, though, it races off towards the north and the west, and then it hangs out there in eastern Canada. We got a pretty decent low that gets going. How about a little maybe wintry precip showing up there in Canada?
See, well, if you just watched our last segment, you heard this happens. This happens in October. It is well placed for the wildfires in Canada.
That's a good point. Yes, so some help there. And of course, we'll have to watch what's going on in terms of the wave action. We'll start to see that beginning to push towards the East Coast, progressing through here for our Saturday into Saturday night. So, yeah, once again, along the East Coast, we're going to deal with issues there right along the coast.
Well, if you plan to set sail on the Great, although I'm still bringing a jacket.
At 75.
If the sun is not on you.
I mean, that's a good point. The sun makes a difference when it comes to these temperatures. So, yeah, we're talking about some of these temperatures here next week where highs will be in the maybe upper 60s. With full sunshine, but that's the high.
Yeah, that's the high.
Most of the days will be spent below that.
Although in the sun, I mean, if you're standing in the full sun, it'll be comfortable.
Jen's back on my side. I like it.
You through the mid-morning hours to get you ready for all the big events in your life.
That's right. The Weather Channel has you covered from coast to coast. Lots to follow, including this front. Jen, you know how we will always talk about the anticipation of vacation?
Yeah.
And it's before the vacation that you really just get hyped and excited about. A lot of us across the country excited about these cooler numbers on the way. The anticipation is here.
That's a really good point. And it might be anticipation in a good or bad way, but either way.
Yes, there's anticipation.
We've been anticipating this front all week. It's finally making a move, bringing some tough weather, though, with it in terms of storms. We're going to talk about that. And, today's big deal feels all too familiar.
Here, Jen, and, of course, northbound, the front, that'll be impacting us, too.
Yeah, no, I meant to ask you, were there any hail reports of large apple size?
The hen there was a 3-inch, so that would qualify for your apple?
Large apple.
What's a large apple?
Like a Cosmic Crisp, I guess, a Honey Crisp, the bigger ones.
Jen is the expert apple.
I don't know. I was wondering that. Now, I think in the Northeast, we won't see a lot of hail or
yeah,
even
we're not expecting much
winds.
severe out there.
No, but we'll get rain, and the front is coming through. And you mentioned the anticipation. Chicago, anticipation over. The front is through. I checked your wind directions. We've completely changed around with that wind direction. So you had frontal passage in Chicago, and now we begin with the infiltration of the cooler air and drier air too, and you'll really feel it by tonight. So temperatures going to drop off into the 50s tomorrow, only 60s for highs. Now we've got lower dew points, and now by Friday night we can drop into the 40s thanks to that. So this is what the front is going to do: bring some rain and then drop your temperatures and your dew points. We see that right now with the rain moving through lower Michigan, down around Grand Rapids. We've got rain for you. It's heading over towards Lansing and will eventually track east. Now it's not speeding eastbound. It's not going to get a traffic ticket or anything, but it is on the move finally. St. Louis, we're into some showers. We may get a few lightning strikes there. Got a few lightning strikes coming in across central Illinois, like around Peoria this morning, but our temperature's down to about 63 degrees, and the front is literally on your doorstep, crossing through as we speak. Now, we are going to watch this front move east. So Indy, it comes through us later this evening, or maybe late afternoon, early evening, moving through Ohio. Behind it, we will get, I think, the secondary push of even drier and cooler air coming in. And then we kind of sink into this upper level low overhead, especially up to the north. Gives us some scattered showers, that strato Q kind of look to your sky, where you've got the clouds that kind of look like they're cotton candy kind of stuck together and can pull apart. And sometimes you get sun that comes through, but that just increases instability and gives you a few showers. They're not going to be big rainmakers, but they'll be out there. So we still have that, by the way, through the rest of the weekend. The main rain comes from the front, and that's where most spots less than an inch, occasionally might get over an inch of rainfall with the front. And then it's about the cooler temperatures, those scattered showers flying around the Great Lakes. Again, we'll see scattered clouds out there. Chicago, it's not going to be a completely sunny weekend or anything, thanks to that upper level low. Detroit, same thing for you. And over the Great Lakes, we might get some water spouts this weekend. Heads up, especially those eastern lakes. Now, elsewhere, behind the front, it's going to be very nice in St. Louis and Kansas City. We'll get to 70 and 74 this weekend. And even in Detroit, we're not expecting much in the way of rain. It'll just stay kind of cloudy, maybe the occasional burst of sun coming through, and temperatures only topping out in the low 50s. So bundle up. Maybe the puffy coat is needed here for that football game, Alex.
Puffy coat indeed.
At least for tailgates. We need to show you where Philippe is right now, and then of course talk about where it's headed. You saw that impact there in the Northeast. So we're in the cone in Maine, also Nova Scotia. It'd be early Sunday morning. We're thinking the time frame here, likely transitioning to extratropical at this point, so kind of more like a nor'easter type of system coming in. I mean, it doesn't even look anything like a regular tropical system right now, right? It's very disorganized. And that was the headline that came from the hurricane hunters with their last overnight flights. It's just, yes, it's maybe grown a little stronger, measuring winds 45 miles per hour, but it's very disorganized. And you can see a lot of that convection or thunderstorm activity is either well south or well north, not a lot to the west, which is why at this point we're not expecting any major strengthening. Right now, the buoy showing up nearby. 10, 15, gusting to nearly 30, but pretty far away in terms of those wind gusts. So it's a pretty larger wind field, but it's not that it's the strongest of wind fields, put it that way. Bermuda's under tropical storm warning. For the fourth time this season, we are going to be affected by a tropical system. It's been a busy one for us. It'll come in and actually probably just track to our west, but because all the activities on the east, that puts us in line to get tropical storm force wind gusts as well as the squally, rainy conditions coming in. And then we have that potential for tropical storm force winds all the way up into Maine yet again for the second time this season. It looks like this. Okay, here's a stop overnight tonight and tomorrow morning. Bermuda getting into that rain. That lasts for you for a chunk of the day anyway. And then we see everything evolving farther north. Now, Saturday, mostly everything offshore. We've got a front coming in right there. That's heading east. It starts to draw in some of the moisture that we'll see from Lee out here. And, in terms of timing, not that it's a race or anything here, but they're going to be neck and neck coming in. The front coming in, Lee coming in at the same time, both moving through quickly, and Lee getting drawn up there into that circulation up into southeastern Canada. Alex.
All right, Jen, well, how about we talk, I want to say shock to the system, but you will definitely notice that when it's in the 40s.
Yeah, whoever's on walking the dog duty this week.
Right.
It's like, oh, when do we change? Sunday or, Saturday morning?
Exactly.
Yes. All right, well, fall is in the air, and so is the frost. You're going
Yeah,
and that's what our floor director John has on, over the head, and he's out there cheering for it. We should have done that vote. All right, well, Terry said this: you can't beat a well-worn hoodie. The versatility's there. You go. There's your outfit choice for the weekend.
Keep the votes coming. Keep the comments coming as well. We love.
They definitely, this time of year when they're starting to turn and you get those really cool nights and those beautiful sunny days, that seems like optimal weather for the fall foliage, right? And, for enjoying it as well. It's been mild lately, though. For those of you enjoying some of this color, which is now hitting peak into Minnesota and northern Michigan, like especially into the UP, it has really been such an abnormally warm time. Great time to get outdoors. I shared some video that Charles Peak took of people on the paddleboard looking at the fall color in Michigan. I mean, how often can you do that, actually? It's usually not warm enough to do so. It certainly has been. And it's been warm here across the Northeast, where our colors are now popping, and we've got peak conditions across a lot of Maine. The exception is down East Maine, closer to the coast, not quite there at peak yet, but seeing some patchy color. And we're starting to see some more near peak color anyway into parts of Connecticut, especially up into the western part there as you get into the mountains. You can actually see it as you look at satellite. So that was August. This is recent, October 4th, satellite imagery showing you the colors from space. What a spectacle when you can see that much, right, from space. Here we go to the upper Midwest, and we've got peak conditions, North Dakota, Minnesota, starting to work into southern Minnesota, like around the Twin Cities. Some patchy color out there in Iowa and Missouri. But over the next, I think, week or so, you'll really start to notice a change, especially with this most recent fall air mass coming in. We're already at peak in western Colorado, southern Wyoming. This is the time to see northern Utah. Colors great in full display right now. And in central Idaho, we've got some patchy color being reported. And again, it'll be this next week or two that we really start to see everything coming to fruition. Peak times, we're getting past it in some of the highest spots where you see the aspens in the west here, and we're starting to really dig in all across the Northeast and Midwest here. This and next weekend are kind of the bigs to it. I mean, they do get hot in end of September, beginning of October.
Yeah, there you go. When the west heats up, usually the east cools down. Yeah. So it's that kind of seesaw action.
Yep. Welcome back, everyone. We've been tracking the front and everything that it's doing, knocking down temperatures, but also bringing storms. We had some pretty nasty storms in Texas yesterday, including winds gusting over hurricane force.
Yeah, it was pretty intense with some of those thunderstorms. And we're still finding some of that activity pushing a bit farther to the south now.
Yeah, parts of the southern plains getting a good old dousing of rain out there. The same front crossing through the Great Lakes, the Northeast comes on in, brings some showers. We actually can see it out there moving over Michigan right now. Out ahead of it, beautiful weather, although we're still kind of socked in with a little fog, especially along the coastal areas. But Boston, you are starting to clear out. Some patchy fog still stuck in some of the valley areas. You know how it goes in October. It's our foggy month. But, most of us, a gorgeous day today. Not as hot as yesterday, but still nice and sunny. The rain comes in as we get you through tonight into tomorrow, and some of that rain will be heavy at times, especially into northern New York and into parts of Maine. That's where not only do we have the front, but we're going to get some moisture from Philippe get pulled on here into the Northeast, and that will bring us some heavy rain and gusty winds. Split.
Well, meteorologist Chris Ward explains.
Yeah, I mean, we have definitely a love-hate relationship with October. And I think most people think they love it, but then
when you dig a little deeper, there's been some tough times out there when it comes to October. But I mean, look at it. Average temperature here for us in the month. You can see it. I mean, generally is very comfortable. You scour out all the humidity, so it can be really, really nice. In fact, I was reading an article by a climate scientist who said there's just so many cities across the country where their most frequent good weather days occur in the month of October.
Right. Except when it doesn't.
Yeah.
And so that's what we want to talk about in this Coffee Talk, that split personality. And, first of all, hurricane season is still very active in October.
And in fact, we talk about this all the time, how October has that kind of secondary uptick in activity. So it could be notorious. And we saw that back in 2020. Remember, we got all the way through the Greek alphabet. Hurricane Delta, at the time, it was a record-time 4th landfall in the U.S. for the season.
Yeah, I mean, and in this area, Lake Charles, Laura had just made landfall a month before. I mean, it certainly had its history even before it came in. It was one of the fastest rapid intensifiers out there, but it did make landfall in Louisiana as a Cat 2. But then soon after that, we had Zeta also threatening Louisiana.
Yeah, I mean, we're just talking just a couple of weeks later.
Right.
Zeta hit here, a Category 3 landfall in Louisiana. It was the strongest so late in the season to make landfall in the U.S. Again, in the month of October.
Yes. I mean, this one, tropical storm warnings all the way up Louisiana to the Carolinas and Virginia. And then it went on to, with its remnants, bring snow to New England. And that's what can happen with, you know, once you get into October. You can get systems that evolve into extratropical. They can tap into the cold air. I mean, we've had snowstorms. Go back to 2011 in the Northeast.
Yep, known as Snowtober. The Halloween nor'easter here resulted in what was known as a white Halloween. How about record snowfall for at least 20 different cities? Yeah,
and the power outages were just unbelievable with that. I mean, there was more than 3.4 million people without power.
That's a lot.
That was a lot, yes. You know, and then it's also the time of year when you get tropical systems and fronts kind of tangling up.
That's usually not a good combination.
No, we saw that in 2015 in South Carolina when we had Hurricane Joaquin never came in, but the moisture, the front, we had the king tides, we had the onshore flow. It was like a perfect storm for flooding here in Charleston. Lots
of rain, really getting a chance to add up. And October, you can get nasty storms, severe weather. In fact, hey, just yesterday, how about the big storms in Texas?
Right. Right. So we know we can get severe weather in October. You go back to 2019 in Texas, and this happened. This was the Texas tornado, the costliest tornado in Texas history in the Dallas area. It was an EF3. We actually had 36 tornadoes with that whole outbreak back in 2019. So October is not all just, you know, pumpkin and spice.
Yeah, you're right about that. It can be a really nice month on the whole, but when you really start digging into it and you pick it out, there's been some really, really nasty weather that we've had to experience in this month.
You're still picking it as your favorite month, aren't you?
Oh, yeah, number one, by far.
Here in Bermuda, we are getting ready for a tropical system. Now, and like we just had with Lee, Philippe is going to take a path right up here and affect the northern parts of New England.
Yeah, you can see as we work our way through the weekend, there it is, moving northbound, and then there's that bend towards the north and the west, crashing its way here, at least what's left of it here, kind of entangled a bit. It's going to be a bit of a mess here by the time we work through the weekend, but just anticipate the winds to pick up a bit and the rain to come down.
Moving in pretty quick here, and that'll be helpful not to allow anything to kind of linger too long. Right now, Philippe is 45 miles per hour. We are waiting for the new advisory to come in. It's very disorganized.
I mean, extremely. I mean, look at where the center is. Look at where all the stormy weather is. There's a little one batch here and one that's kind of flared up right in that zone as well. So until you can get all that kind of co-located where the center is, it's going to have a tough time really getting its act together and really strengthening.
I mean, there's obviously some shear. You just kind of can see all the clouds racing by off to the west here. It's truly a hot mess out there right now. We do have a tropical storm warning that is up for Bermuda, and your conditions will go downhill starting later today.
All right, well, as we push things towards the north, you can see the probability of tropical storm force winds there around Bermuda, kind of right around, I'd say 50 to 60% chance. And then as you head northbound, those probabilities do come down a bit. But again, anticipate again some gusty winds and some of that rain coming through.
You know, we can put this into modeling and put this model into motion and show you in Bermuda, yes, we go downhill later today with the rain, squalls, tropical storm force winds. And then once we get into Friday and Saturday, the wingspan of this thing kind of gets bigger, spreads out, but it doesn't necessarily get that much stronger.
Right, exactly, exactly. So we're going to be talking about two different things. You got what's going on with Philippe, plus a front coming in from the west. All that's going to aid in some of the rain we see in the northeast heading through this weekend. Look what it does. Northwest, and there it is kind of hanging out in Canada, and cold enough that we could see maybe some wintry precipitation in Canada.
See, that's what happens with these October storms. You get all the clashing of the seasons. Waves will be up again for what, the third weekend in a row, fourth weekend in a row?
Every weekend it's been an issue in the east, right?
Well, speaking of the beach, let's go to your beach.
I have no idea what a shacket is.
Oh, it's like a shirt jacket. It's a great ad. It's kind of like a thicker flannel. Sometimes they're fleece, but they're like a jacket shirt.
Huh?
These usually buttons.
Guess what
I'll be doing? Collar.
I'll be Googling that here after the show.
It's a good look. It's a good look. I think you could pull it off, Alex.
I'll look it up.